Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome to the Commissioners of St. Mary's County meeting this date, Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. I am Randy Guy, President of the Commissioners of St. Mary's County. I'd like to introduce the other commissioners. Sitting to my right, representing 1st Commissioner District, which includes Ridge, Piney Point, St. George Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good morning.
Representing 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mr. Mike Hewitt.
Good morning.
Sitting to my left, representing 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, Mr. Mike Alderson Jr.
Good morning.
Representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, Sonoma, California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Scott Ostro is caught in traffic, but will be joining us very shortly. So we'll see what happens. Oh my goodness. We got a special guest just coming through the front door here. We have a special guest this morning. Hey.
You've all been awfully good boys this year.
Thank you, Santa. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, appreciate it. Everyone.
It's Santa's busy season, so he can't stay for long, but he definitely wanted to come and wish his favorite county commissioners a happy Christmas.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you, Santa, for being here, joining us.
Everybody make sure you stay being good. It's not quite Christmas, so stay on your best behavior. Make sure you're being good to your neighbors, and keep writing me those letters. Michael, I've gotten a letter from you every day this year. I'm very proud of you. Merry Christmas!
Well, thank you, Santa, for joining us today.
Merry Christmas!
And be careful out there.
Yes, my reindeer.
Now, getting back to our official business, see at the end of the dais is David Weiskopf, our county administrator.
Hello.
On my immediate right is Julia Birch, our recorder for today. And sitting at the table to my right is our communications director, Ms. Jenna Guzman.
Good morning.
I'm sure that the Commissioner Ostro will be here sometime. He's getting caught up here, but he'll be here very shortly. And our video production team is behind the glass. Please turn your cell phones off or on vibrate. When you come to the presenter's table, please come down the center aisle. And remember, this meeting is being televised, so you need to speak clearly and directly into the microphone for recording purposes. In other words, look good when you come down front here. At this time, we have invocation and pledge by Commissioner Colvin. Please stand.
Almighty God, as we gather together for our last meeting of 2024, we thank you for this opportunity to serve. We thank you for the challenges that we've been able to face, and we ask that you guide us in the work that we do today and into the coming new year. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Colvin. Next, we need the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have the Department of Finance fiscal year 2024 audit report. You, Mr.
The auditor is going to present.
Okay, Ms. Lehman?
Yep.
Okay.
Good
yes,
morning,
sir.
everyone.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. This is a first for me. I've never had to present right after Santa Claus, so but I don't disappoint here. But,
Good news, and you'll be fine.
yeah,
Give us good news and we'll be okay.
Great.
It'll be
And
Merry
I have-
Christmas then.
in all seriousness, I have a brief presentation I'll walk through here. If there's questions either during or afterward, I can take those.
Okay.
But I'll walk through this fairly at a high level. And we can go to slide 6, if we could. Again, I'm Chris Lehman. I was the engagement partner again for this year's audit services. So on this slide here, you can see what we were engaged to perform. We were engaged to perform an audit of the June 30, 2024 financial statements for the county. In addition, the county is also required to undergo what's termed a uniform guidance single audit. That is a federally mandated compliance audit for government entities that expend more than $750,000 per year of federal funds. and we're still in the process of completing that audit. That audit's not due till March 31st, 2025. In addition, the state of Maryland has a requirement for counties to have an audit of their 911 trust fund. That's the 911 revenue that's received, as well as the 911 related operating expenses. In addition, we do provide assistance with preparing the financial statements. We make sure that all data is derived from finances records. We don't house any, we don't maintain any data. That's all really management data that we're using to draft the financial statements. And then upon completion of the single audit, we will prepare and submit what's termed the data collection form, which lets the federal government know the county's met its requirements for the single audit. Next slide. So summary of the results. On the financial statements, we've issued what's termed a clean or unmodified opinion. Our audit is not a forensic audit, but we are required to have a healthy skepticism of fraud. And we did not uncover any fraud during our audit. We were not made aware of any fraud during the audit either. We did not record any journal entries to the data that was used for the financial statements. We discovered no material weaknesses in the internal controls. I have a couple slides coming up that'll walk through the key processes, and what we're looking for in those key processes is the process designed effectively, and then is it operating effectively? If a process is broken, that typically leads to some sort of issue or a deficiency. And like I said, we had no material weaknesses that we identified through that process. And then lastly, we received the full cooperation of management. Any questions that we asked, we received adequate answers, timely answers. All records that we requested backup for, we received backup for those items.
Mr. Lehman, tell me, what would be an example of a material weakness?
So that would be,
See those terms every year. And
so if there was an error in the financial statements that management did not catch, that of a material amount. So I'm making up a number here, but if cash was understated by $6 million and we caught that through our audit, that could lead.
Okay, that's
that
a
would be an
material-
example of a material
That's something we
weakness.
should have caught.
It's something that should have been caught through the process of either throughout the year just processing normal transactions, or at year end to close the books, book accruals, and prepare the financial statements. If there was a material error, that could result in a material weakness.
Okay, now tell me, the information you get, the information you review is provided by our finance department, right?
Right, so we prepare no original schedules or data. It's
So
all prepared.
I guess my thought would be all you'd be finding would be an arithmetic error or something along that area that our own people should have made, but you don't have outside information from, like, say, banks or any institution.
Sometimes we do get confirmations. For example, we look at like actuarial reports that are done by third parties, like Boomershine does the actuary reports. We would look at that in comparison to information in the financials. That could possibly lead to finding a discrepancy.
Okay, go ahead.
But it's not not here, but in other places. Not only could it be a mathematical error, it could be misapplication of an accounting policy. Sometimes it could be just lack of having financial resources, or someone that maybe reconciled an account one year no longer is doing that, or having someone new. So there's a number of reasons that could lead to a material weakness.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
This picture here is just a picture of our audit approach. It's really designed to be a funnel of how we filter risk through the audit process. What I'll go into in the next few slides when we get there is really our assessment of the design and the operation of controls, which is the second layer here, where we understand both how the county has designed its key processes and then testing on the results of those key processes. And then from there, once management closes the books, we do a financial close and reporting analysis, and then substantive testing, which is validating year-end numbers. It's substantially a balance sheet test, or primarily a balance sheet test, validating cash and other assets and liabilities. Next slide. And then as far as as we look at the key processes, we also look at the entire control environment that the county operates in from a financial perspective and an accounting perspective. And the control environment, the model that we use, has 5 interrelated components here. listed on the left, and they really all have to work hand in hand to be functioning. And in entities that don't have a well-controlled environment is typically where we see the things that you don't want to have, the material weaknesses, the journal entries. It's not even uncommon to have delays in getting an audit done when there's not a well-controlled environment. Here, we've concluded that there is an effective environment for the period under audit. Next slide. And then starting on this slide, and it will continue to a second slide. So as far as looking at the key processes that impact the financial statements, we look at the treasury cycle. That's looking at timeliness of bank reconciliations, accuracy of bank reconciliations, as well as the fiduciary funds for the pension and the OPEB trust funds. There's certain estimates within the financial statements, predominantly around actuarial assumptions for pension and for OPEB, are very heavy actuarial calculations that do impact the numbers. Look at the financial reporting and closing of the books process, as well as expenditures and disbursements. And we've concluded that both the design and the operation of those controls were effective for the period under audit. And next slide. Also looking at payroll records, timekeeping, timesheets, dispersing payroll, paying employees at the correct rate, looking at the revenue cycle, as well as fixed asset accounting. And we've also concluded that each of these areas was effective for the period under audit. Questions so far? All right, the last few pages here, I'm not going to read through these. I touched on some of these at the beginning. But if we had difficulties getting through the audit, if we had disagreements with management, had there been unacceptable accounting policies or maybe overly aggressive accounting policies, I'd be required to bring that to the commissioner's attention. There's really nothing of a negative nature through our audit procedures that I need to bring to your attention. So,
No negative nature information. I'm going to write that down.
okay. But as far as I can only give you so many technical accounting terms, but unmodified opinion, no material weaknesses, no fraud that we've uncovered. I can't be too creative in my literature, I guess, from what.
You've been very
with
creative.
that, so that's the presentation. If there's anything I could cover there, or even I'll do my best on the financials if there's anything to cover there as well.
I got a few if it's
Go
my...
ahead, Commissioner. Good. Yeah, I'll start with
Well,
you.
go ahead. I
No,
know-
I don't have any. I'm good.
Okay. So, I've been reading these things since 2009, and I've
Okay.
got my education on the Board of Education, back when I used to say that the proposed budget was a wish list. The approved budget was, this is what we think we're going to do. But the audited budget, this is what we did. So I always like these audited budgets because it tells us where we may have overestimated, underestimated, that type of thing. So with that said, there's two terms I see stick out. One was material weakness, and I appreciate that one.
Okay.
The other one is a structural deficiency.
Okay.
So give me an idea, what is a structural deficiency? We hear the governor this past week telling us that there's a structural deficit of $2,170,000,000 or some outrageous number. What is a structural deficiency?
Well, I mean, as far as what we would look at I can speak of what we would look at from an audit perspective and what would be a red flag from our perspective. Well, one is going into a budget year, what's your available kind of fund balance from the previous year? Because that's basically a safety net of what you can use going into subsequent years. So that's kind of step one. Step two would be for that, because budgets are forward-looking. So the benefit I get is I get to audit what was, and that's easier for me to do. I don't envy what you guys do on a budgetary perspective. But from the next step would be is the budget balanced, or is it using fund balance from the prior year to fill a gap for that need? And then is that an ongoing item? Because it could be a 1-year deficiency between revenue and expense where you could make a conscious decision, we're going to use fund balance for this purpose, and everyone knows that it's either one time or something's going to have to catch up to balance that in the future. versus is it a systemic issue where revenues are constantly falling short of budget,
you're
which will
constantly
either use up the rest of that fund balance, or if I've seen some governments or entities not even actually have the available fund balance, and their balance ends up almost being wishful thinking that they either have to have, say, attrition for employees for that to materialize, or the revenues maybe was estimated a little aggressively and that doesn't materialize. But really, it would have to get close for us to have a modified opinion or really a going concern. Those are probably two of the most negative consequences there could be in an audit from a budgetary perspective, having a negative opinion, because now on the GAAP statements, there's deficits, meaning the net, like the fund balances are significantly negative.
Right.
Because the budget schedule, although it's not necessarily GAAP, it will result in GAAP results if the budget's not properly managed. And that could lead to a negative impact on the opinion or even a going concern, which would raise doubt for the entity to continue over the next 12 months. Now, that used to not be that common with governments, but that has been coming a little more increasingly. I haven't seen that here in Maryland. I think Maryland entities or finances are in better shape, just generally speaking, compared to some other municipalities and states across the country. So I haven't seen going concern issues here, but going concern issues have crept up in other jurisdictions across the country.
Okay, well, we like to think that we keep in
And
here.
sorry if
you
I
sa-
went too much on a tangent. I was trying to cover what
In here,
you were
you
alluding to.
mentioned, or the narrative mentioned, that we use a conservative approach to our budgeting. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I wouldn't say that in the opinion, but yeah, I would say that your budget's conservative.
Okay, because many times we have people will say, hey, look, you guys are spending too much, you're racking up too much debt.
But,
And
I would say it's all budgeting's in the eye of the beholder. Also, so
But there's a term called experts and professionals, and I think you're one. And not that I'm one, but I have had a lot of experience, and I've read a lot of these. So I like to take this very seriously. But back to what I'm driving at. You talked about fund balances. Now, what we've done and what I need you to change in your report is you continue to talk about the 6% bond reserve, which we no longer use, and the $1,625,000 rainy day fund, which we no longer use. We've scrapped that whole idea and went to a 15% fund balance. So our goal there and some of the stuff we had read and been told, is that we should keep a 15% fund balance to keep our strong financials. We recently got a AAA bond rating from Finch, and they recognize that 15% as something we should keep in mind. Next thing would be, you do other municipalities similar in size to us?
yeah, we probably audit 10 other counties within the state of Maryland.
Okay, and in regard to that baseline, are we in line with all of them, below them, above them?
As far as fund balance,
Well, no, as far
Or
as consistency with having a budget, an audited budget that looks, no material weaknesses, no structural deficiencies.
I would say that's on average with what we see across other clients. Yes.
Good, well, that's good to know, because I
Okay,
want
yeah.
to be, I want to be
You're
like the
not.
other-
I wouldn't say you guys are an outlier one way or the other.
Good, that's what I want to
Okay.
hear. So, let's see. You also talk about OPEB and retirement funds. And when we started this process of GASB 45 or 75, or which 5 it was, that was back in 2008, and it was set on a 30-year amortization at $4,888,000 a year. What got Mike Hewitt conscious of this stuff is when I saw we did $14,888,000 back in 2009, and I thought to myself, why in the world are we giving such an additional amount? I often viewed it as a generational disparity. It wasn't fair to the people putting that much in 2009 when it was supposed to be laid out over 30 years, and the people who were not going to have to pay in 38, 37, 36, 35 because of that. But the good news is we got it forward funded. We stopped funding it in 2014, but we caught the real estate, not the real estate, but, well, that
The
too.
stock market.
But the stock market at such a time that the equities market went nuts.
Yes.
And since that time, it's probably been, 30,000 points or whatever it's been. And that's reached us to what I call our corpus, or the amount we had to get to. So the money that rolled out of it, the return that rolled out of it, could pay the retirement cost without having to take that out of our general fund. Allowed that general fund money to be used for other types of investments. So back to what I'm driving at. I read here that you said it's up to 139 million, and right now I think we're about 126.
121, but close. Yeah.
I
Well, I
think
guess maybe now, as subsequent to year end.
I think your information's probably 3 months.
Yeah,
behind.
this is as of June 30. So, yeah, but the liability was 139 at June 30 with the assets at 121.
Okay, so the thing that makes that liability rise is increase in employees, the number of employees,
Correct.
and the increase in the amount of payroll?
Correct.
Okay, so by not funding it, are we putting ourselves in liability of it? Look, the answer to the question is no. I don't think we're putting ourselves in an insoluble position, because we're still at 86.25%, but that's a
Correct.
question for you. I got my answer. I'd like to hear yours.
So there's theories out there of how, like, what's a proper funding percentage for a pension or a OPEB plan, and theoretically the goal's never really to be quite at 100%, and it might just my kind of off the cuff discussions with actuaries, right? If they're saying that if you put in the actuarially determined contribution over time, that plus the earnings that you accumulate from the market should be enough to pay for the benefits that were promised. That doesn't mean at any point in time when you take the calculations here that it should be at 100% funded. So to your point where it was overfunded in the past, that led to actually an OPEB asset because the total liability was more than 100% funded. The overfunding plus the market were the two significant drivers of that. Now, without that contribution being made over the past few years, there's still the benefit of the market happening, but not the benefit of the contributions, where that funded percentage went from over 100%. So it has gone down to 86%, but I'll say that that's still a fairly well-funded plan. Now, again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But I would say there's lots of governments that would be envious to have an 86% funded percentage.
I mean, so many municipalities, counties are way underfunded.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's
like
it's ignored by
86%
the big
is-
boys.
A lot of people would be very jealous of that, but that's because, and that's partly why you mentioned the OPEB accounting changing. That's partly why it changed, because prior to the newer OPEB rules, the net OPEB liability actually wasn't reported on the entity-wide financial statements. It used to just be the underfunding of if you didn't put in your determined contribution, it would be the accumulation of the deficit of underfunding,
Well, we were always
which is a smaller number than the total liability that the actuaries calculated.
We were always told, though, that the money that was underfunded into that was going to influence our balance sheet and affect our bond rating. That type of thing was something we took seriously.
Yep.
And so we went after that. But I think to some degree, that money could be reallocated to whatever it could be allocated to, investments in the county for our constituents to appreciate versus sitting in a trust fund that is well-funded. Enough of
Yep.
that. Tell me, Metcom, you also do Metcom, you also do library.
Yeah, so we audit the three discretely presented component units that are also included in the front of the financial statements.
And I noticed that what it says is each of them have a different amount that they think should be funded for an increase in health insurance. Is that something that's just recommended to you, or is that I've heard that said actuaries say it should be 15%, and I don't know.
Yeah, so the actuary will work with each one of them to do the actuarially determined calculation as basically what's the time horizon and they'll work with each of the clients on it. What's the time horizon that the liability should be funded over, what's the risk profile of the investments, and then they'll calculate what's termed an ADC, or actuarially determined contribution, as a recommendation of if you are to get quote unquote, fully funded or funded into the future, this is what we would recommend on an annual basis for that entity to save in the trust. Now, it's up to that each individual entity, if they've got the funding for it, or B, if they make the decision to do it. And I know sometimes those are tied in together, but that'll be an entity decision of how much, if to fully fund it, partially fund it, or what have you.
Well, for us to make a decision, should we have an actuarial conversation or a conversation where there are actuaries to understand why, if we've had consistently lower than those amounts for our actual claims, why they should continue to be hold so much?
That could be, yeah.
All right, look, I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, yeah,
apologize. Look, you've done a great job, and I appreciate it,
Okay,
but
thank
I
you.
find this stuff interesting. I read it thoroughly,
I know you do, and I appreciate that.
but again, it's important.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Eric,
other-
you got any questions more? Yeah.
I'm good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Everybody else?
I've got a couple questions.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I read through your report, and I wrote down a few questions here. Could you give us it can be high level, but can you describe how you assessed our system and what you found as far as payroll in our payroll system?
So what we assess are, we will look at the time reporting, so like the time sheets that people fill out. And we do this on one is we understand the process and do walkthroughs and observations. And secondarily, we'll pick a sample for testing. And our sample, typically, when we factor in the single audit, our sample sizes are probably about 80 that we're looking at. Let's call it about 80 samples in total. So we can't look at everything, but we would look at, primarily our reliance are on timesheets, seeing that they're approved, looking at the pay rates for individuals or salaries to see if they're approved, and then recalculate based on the time and the pay rates or the salaries to see if that person was actually paid the correct amount. Would be in a nutshell, what the test would involve.
And did you find any instances where payroll wasn't processed effectively on time? Any of those issues?
Not in our sample. We did not.
Can you explain how comp time is tracked?
Well, there's, for comp time, what we get is a report out of the payroll system that would show the accumulated hours for each person. And then we would basically look back at certain pay periods to see if they earned it at the right rate, or if they, based on their timesheet, if they took leave. So if someone took leave today and they used 8 hours, was that a reduction in the tracking of that comp time? So it'd also be somewhat on the sampling basis of rolling forward certain people's balances, and then ultimately tying that out. So in the financial statements, there's the compensated absence liability, which is ultimately the estimated payout or unused balance of that we would tie it out to.
And you didn't find any glitches
No,
or
but again, it's a sample basis, so we'd almost have to be
Cross-section.
lucky sometimes, but that's why normally understanding the design, understanding what management does typically gives us more of a benefit than the test, because if we know that they were doing it wrong, then we would know that the results
Right.
would be wrong. If we know that they're doing it right, then we sample to say, well, on average, and there's sampling and stuff that would support the guide, like statistical sampling and stuff, that if we test X amount, that would give us comfort that you could extrapolate that to the population.
In my day job, I'm also a contracts and procurement officer. So I've been through a lot of audits. So I have very clear understanding of when you come in and you take that sampling. 'Cause
Okay,
it's
all
across a lot of spectrums and.
Yeah, I just never want to give the perception that there's absolute assurance, so.
But it's a large cross section if you're going to find
Yeah, and
something.
if I gave absolute assurance, we'd have to charge so much because we'd have to look at every
You'd
transaction.
have to have a tiger team come in
Yeah,
and really
yeah.
pull everything apart.
That would be more of a, like a performance audit. If,
And I
we
just
did
have a few
greater.
more questions. On our information systems, can you describe how you checked for appropriate data quality?
So we have our IT team look at the financial system. So one is we look at a number of things. So we look at who has access to the ledger? Does that appear to be someone that should have access to the ledger? We look at the duties that people have. So like, for example, it's not uncommon for certain people within the system to have elevated access to the system because like IT department might have to have more control than say someone that's just posting an entry to cash or something. So we look at the term super users or elevated users to see, do we believe those are should those people actually be super users? And then we look at also change management. So like the super user, is there a report that would show what did they do as far as like, did they make a change to something? Because then that could be indicative of maybe they shouldn't have been at that level making a change. We look at backups of the server, making sure that they're backups of the financial data on a periodic basis. We look at where those are stored. So that's just an example of some of the things. And again, we're only looking at the financial system itself. If there's other systems that house non-financial data, we're not looking at that. But we do have our IT person look at that as part of the audit process.
Now, I come from a very kind of lean Six Sigma point of view on things. Did you find throughout your audit of any how do I phrase it? Let's see, what did I write here? Any redundant or underutilized systems that we could?
No, and that looking for underutilized wouldn't necessarily be the scope. Because we're not necessarily auditing for, say, efficiency.
I'm just looking for where we can save money if you
best use.
brought it.
We're just more of, could the financial data be subject to error that could result in an error in the financial statements? It's more of that lens than getting more efficiency out of the system. So I can't speak on that too much.
And one last question. Could you describe how you assessed our purchasing and procurement system?
So what we did is in our sample of cash disbursements, what we look at, we take it from basically the disbursement all the way back to the beginning of the process. So that would be, now depending on the level, there's different, as you probably know, it depends on, the procurement process will vary depending on the level of the purchase. So we'll start with the expenditure, the very end of the transaction, but then we'll take that back all the way to the beginning. So if it was a vendor where the purchase was large enough to require the procurement, we would look and see, did that go through the procurement process or the RFP?
Are you looking for areas where, because like when we have federal auditors come in and audit our books on the federal level, they're looking for, was proper competition? Are you checking for those things?
That is an aspect of it, yes. And we don't. It's really, was the process followed for that transactions? We don't necessarily go through the contract and say, you know, if the materials are supposed to be purchased in the United States, we wouldn't like necessarily check certain compliance items for that. But the overall policy, if the purchase was over the amount to require, you know, bids, we would look and say, okay, was that done? If it was quotes, was it quotes? Yep.
Now, one of the things we also look for, or we get looked at when we get audited, is that we have a vendor rating system per se. So did you find evidence of post-procurement activities that it was reviewed to make sure that everything was done correctly within the system?
You meaning that the county checked after the fact to make sure
yes,
that they followed the process?
That they followed their process correctly and that the vendor delivered properly and that...
Yeah, and we've included that, and we didn't have any concerns related to that aspect of it.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good to know. Anything else, Commissioners?
I'm going to move to accept the report of the independent auditor on the financial statements of the Commissioners of St. Mary's County for fiscal year 2024 as presented.
Second.
One little thing, I want to recognize Our financial team is sitting here in the audience. And Ms. Van Cleve, our financial officer, we want to thank you all very much for this report because you worked hard to get it done. We definitely appreciate it. I have a first and second on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, sir, for the presentation.
Here.
See, next we go right into county administrator time.
Thank you, Commissioner President Guy. First, as always, is the draft agendas. There will be no meeting on December 24th or December 31st. On Tuesday, January 7th, we'll meet at our normal time and place, followed by a proclamation for National Mentoring Month, followed by county administrator time, commissioner time, adjourn, and then come back to this very room at 6:30 for the first public forum of the year.
2025.
Next, on January 14th, you'll start at your normal time and place, followed by county administrator time, commissioner time, and then adjourn. And first on today's is from the Sheriff's Office for fiscal year 2026 state aid for police protection application. And I see the Sheriff's CFO, Lottie Bell, and Captain Moses approaching. Welcome.
Welcome.
Good morning. Morning, Commissioners. Mr. Wisecall. All right, the Recurring State Aid for Police Protection Grant is a formula-driven funding program used to supplement resources for police protection and expenditures in our local communities. State funds provide this additional revenue to support the operational costs of local police agencies. Costs are shared between the state and its municipalities on an equitable basis within certain limits related to population factors. Funds are distributed based on a formula, and annual fund distributions are calculated in part according to previous year's operational costs. Today, we present Part 1 of this State Aid for Police Protection Grant application, which contains estimated operational and capital expenditures for police protection for FY26. The estimated FY26 expenditures will be used to calculate the estimated local aid funding for FY25. It's important to note that corrections and court security expenditures are excluded from the grant, and there are some costs included in this submission which are relevant to police protection but are covered by the county's Department of Finance, Information and Technology, Public Works and Transportation, as well as County Risk Management and Emergency Services. The responsiveness and continued assistance of these other departments is greatly appreciated. And the $1.3 million anticipated grant funding will be included in the Sheriff's FY26 budget request as a revenue-only grant. The budgeted amount will be adjusted if needed when the state provides the awarded amount. This is a complex submission, but we will try to answer any questions should you have any.
Yeah, a simple one. This says Part 1. How many parts are there?
2.
Oh, okay. So when's the second one coming?
January, but that can probably be done via delegated authority.
Okay, so you don't need to come here.
Yes, sir.
So you're going to hold 1.3 million in the budget for this grant, but we don't know the exact amount of the grant until it's submitted and the formula's done. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
What's been the history of it?
So it's, the last few years is 1.3 million, anywhere from 1 million to 1.3.
Do you have no reason to expect any surprises?
No, sir. You know,
That's good.
hoping for better, but yeah.
All right, I move to approve the grant application for the SFY 2026 State Aid for Police Protection Program from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, and authorize the Commissioner, President, and Sheriff to execute the related documents and staff to submit electronically.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you all.
Grants are good. Grants are good.
Answer good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great holiday.
You too now.
Thank you all. Next up, from the Department of Emergency Services, is the 911 console replacement project. Deputy Jennifer Utz approaching, along with Deputy Director Kirsten Shea. Welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome, ladies.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So back during the CIP review, we had a brief discussion on the proposal or the remodeling of the existing 911 center. So this is sort of just a brief recap of that discussion. So our last update was approximately 12 years ago in the center. So this proposal would be to expand our existing center from 9 to 11 consoles, ensure that we maintain ADA compliance in our workspace, and enhance life safety code compliance through design modification. On November 21st, the Maryland 911 Board awarded a move to award St. Mary's County with a grant award of $451,771 towards the project. There is an associated county contribution of $207,789 for construction costs. We reviewed the initial plan and coordinated that with IT and DPW. And so today we come to you with a two-part request. One, request that the commissioners move to accept the grant award from the 911 Board in the amount of $451,771. And the second part is to approve the use of capital reserve funds for the balance of the $207,789 for the construction phase of the project. And here to answer any questions or concerns or feedback.
So tell me, the 207,789, that's for actually essentially renovating the space?
Correct.
The construction portion.
Yeah, and then the 451 will be the actual equipment going in.
Right, the consoles,
Yeah, I guess my point is, it makes sense, because I was a little confused when I read this, because I thought we had just talked about this a week or so ago, or not long ago.
a couple weeks ago during CIP, yes, sir.
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yep.
All right, oh, good, thank you.
And just to be clear, the 207,789, it's coming out of capital reserve. I see we've got a budget worksheet that's changing here, and it looks like we're increasing bond funds to cover this. Is that correct?
I would yield to the CFO or the deputy.
It wasn't coming out of reserves?
Yeah, I thought it was coming out of reserve, not bond.
Maybe I'm reading the sheet wrong,
What's
but
where are you reading?
on the CIP sheet here.
So the CIP sheet is, when you take money from the FEN, it's divided into several portions, of course, transfer tax, bond, and such. So that was taken, I believe, when the project for the building programmatic project, that's the funded, was it PF or, I apologize, I didn't have it with me.
PF 2508.
Yeah, but it says the FIN 25 capital reserve.
Right. So it does come from the capital reserve, but the portion that is funding the PF 2508 is bond, so that's where it would go. You don't actually have, your transfer tax and such is already budgeted. So anything
Well, it looks like
over
it's a
and above-
split of both transfer tax and bonds. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you
Right.
take it from whatever pot is available in the FIN,
Okay.
okay?
We wouldn't want to take it from fund balance?
That's what I was.
That's what, yeah.
Well, the fund balance, we're in the current, and this is for the current fiscal year.
Right.
Fiscal year '25. So your fund balance in fiscal year '25 has already been designated what to use for this current budget.
Okay. That's why you're the expert. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, makes sense.
I appreciate your help.
Clear.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on it, so thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I move to approve the 911 console replacement project, reducing the FIN 25 capital reserve and increasing building services programmatic PF 2508 for the construction portion of $207,789 and reducing the Commissioner's appropriation reserve and increasing Maryland 911 Board MD 2538 for $451,771 as presented, and authorize the Commissioner President to execute the related documents.
Second.
Got a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And next up, also from the Department of Emergency Services, is the USGS Weather Station Monitoring Device for St. George's Island. Ms. Shea will be replaced by our emergency manager. Welcome.
Good morning.
All right. So again, this will be a familiar conversation. We recently accepted a grant, or several grants, but the St. George Island Tidal Monitoring Gauge is a crucial piece of equipment that was installed in 2012 and has not been functioning for quite some time. This device is used by the National Weather Service as part of a predictive weather modeling for the area, for the region, in fact, for tide, for weather events, for coastal flooding. So it's imperative for early warning, for predictive modeling, and then obviously emergency management planning for when we, call for any kind of evacuations or shelter in place, or however we're going to respond to natural hazards. The current equipment is inoperable and needs to be replaced. So the USGS has authorized, it's a $25,000 project. They've authorized $10,000 towards the project to offset the initial cost.
Okay, so it's 25 to replace it, and we're paying 15, they're paying 10?
Yes, so it's 25 to replace it, to install it and monitor it for the year. So it would be 10,000, so what we're asking for is to approve the joint funding agreement. And so it would be 10,000 from the USGS and 15,000 from us. For the balance of FY '25 and FY '26, we have other funding in DES and emergency management to cover the cost. We would not be assuming or asking to assume the cost in our operating budget until FY '27. So for the balance of FY '25 and FY '26, emergency management has enough funds and grant funds to cover the cost.
So explain the FY '26 part of that to me. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So Amy has,
So the agreement is for the remainder of FY '25, which would be 6 months,
Right.
and the installation and equipment, and then it would need a renewal for FY '26.
Okay, so my assumption was we would be picking up the operating cost in FY '26 to monitor this. So that was going to be my question is, what is that? Because we're in essence building FY '26 budget when we pass this here.
so our initial thought was to pick it up in '26, but we do have grant funds to offset it,
Okay.
What's the cost to run it?
about 12 to 15,000 a year. So we have
All right.
we have four existing in the county, two of which we currently are funded for and maintain. We're budgeted for up to 15,000 per device, and we're currently paying about 12.5 a year to maintain those devices. The other two are maintained externally. We believe they're maintained through the state, but the USGS maintains them, but they're billed back to another entity, but it's not St. Mary's County.
Okay.
Well, a constituent who lives in Tall Timbers, who does a lot of sailing, had reached out to me, I don't know, within the last year, saying, hey, that device is broke. Who do we got to talk to get it running? So I mentioned it to Senator Bailey, because I figured it was something to do with DNR. And of course, he told me he didn't know to ask Coast Guard. So when will it be up and running?
I'm hoping by January 1, but we have holidays, so,
So 30, 60 days.
yeah.
All right, good. All right.
That's good. So just one note, in the packet here, the scope of work that's prepared by the U.S. Geological Survey, and it has a little chart that lists out the costs and the startup costs and so forth. It lists St. Mary's Lake at California, Maryland as the location, and I think that's a mistake that they did in here. That
Hard to
makes
say
sense.
where that lake is located sometimes, you know.
That's
They say it's in Leonardtown and,
Well,
Red Gate.
should say St. George's Island.
oh, St. Mary's Lake?
Oh, it does
Oh,
say that.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm just.
It says between the Potomac and St. Mary's.
Yes,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
This
I'm gonna
monitor,
send this back to the USGS for.
I can have them update the agreement.
Just for
It says
someone was
nestled-
copy
it-
pasting.
It does
looks
say
like.
nestled between Potomac and St. Mary's River.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Had
So-
the wrong location.
Which is true, it is. It's sort of St. Mary's River's on one side of St. George's Island and the Potomac's on the other.
True.
I know, sounds,
And then just I mean, this is obviously a no-brainer and a great thing. I would just say if we want to perhaps make it easier for us, or at least for me, and probably I shouldn't speak for the other commissioners, for me, because sometimes I need it broken out a little better. Just the breakout of what the total cost, what the county's covering, and what the grant is covering. It was I dug and it wasn't that hard to figure out, but the memo could have laid it out a little clearer there, and just what the recurring costs would be. But thank you.
Absolutely, will do.
So I move to approve the U.S. Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement for Water Resources Investigations between the U.S. Geological Survey and Commissioners of St. Mary's County, and further authorize the Commissioner President to sign all related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the last county administrator item for 2024,
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
barring any emergencies.
Well, we'll start right into Commissioner's time then. We'll start with Commissioner Hewitt this time.
Oh, goodness, all right, thank you. Okay, last week we went to Mako out there in Cambridge, winter conference, and it was a very interesting conference. They cover multiple subjects, but the main one this commissioner was interested in was blueprint, cost of education, and solar siting. Interested in solar siting because there's a company that wants to site a solar utility project in the Mechanicsville area on a piece of property, 610 acres. That's what I would call a brownfield. It was a munitions site back in the 50s. I'm not sure it's ever been cleaned up. People have tried to do different things with it, tried to build a subdivision in there, and it was just too risky, just too much trouble. Tried to put an asphalt plant in there, and no, that wasn't a good idea. But it's ideal property for a solar utility because what it is, it's right next to the power lines. It's about 250 feet off the road, and you wouldn't see it from the road. And lastly, it's not in the way of flight paths or anything to do with the Navy. So it seems like it's a good idea. But of course, you know, this thing keeps going round and round and round at the state level, and they talk about the Maryland imports 40% of its electricity. And they're talking about their portfolios and their green energy and these types of things, but they don't make progress. So in my 10th year going to Mako, it seems to be the same thing when it comes to state initiatives. Yeah, it's a great idea. I really like it, but I can't get anywhere. So we're going to continue to follow that. Blueprint, that was another one we talked about out there. And it's interesting to note, as one session we went to, there was 4 different counties all across the state, from different parts of the state: Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, Northern Maryland, Charles County was in there. Bottom line was everybody was saying that, look, we're trying as hard as we can to get this blueprint started. We've been 3 years at this now, and we're making these hard decisions, but there's just things we can't control, things we can't do. And the big one is, and at least in this commissioner's opinion, was the idea that you have 3-year-olds in classrooms and we have space for that. Now, we don't have spaces in the high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, any of the schools, to have all 3-year-olds in there. But we thought maybe it could be with the private providers, the daycare centers, but they haven't come forth. They're not getting there. It's a big challenge. And it was something that was very frustrating to other municipalities along with this one. The governor reported at our final dinner there on Thursday night that the state is going to pause some of the blueprint implementations. Now, there's people who say they're following this blueprint, and you can't pause any of it because it has to all go together or it's going to fall apart. But the governor's talking about a $2.17 billion structural deficit that he inherited, and who knows about all that. But the key is that it's going to be more belt tightening, and it's going to be more, how are we going to pay for this? And I'm glad to hear that the governor's going to pause at least something. Now, he wasn't really, we couldn't exactly understand exactly what he was going to pause, but it was something about trying to give teachers more time for professional development and away from the classroom types of things that would add to their ability to do their job better, which this commissioner supports. But the key gets to be is, how do you pay for it? We need to find out what's going to happen this legislative session, and hopefully we'll get some relief from this never-ending thing of we've got more money, more money, more money. Now, we also had a very interesting, last one I went to was on Friday morning, where we had Miss Carrie Wright, the new state superintendent, got to speak in a fireside chat. She was hired in April of 2024, just 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And the point was, she was very interesting. She had spent her last 9 years, she was originally from Maryland, her last 9 years had been in Mississippi as a state superintendent for the school system of Mississippi. And she's been very successful at upgrading literacy rates. It took Mississippi from number 50 to number 34, which obviously is a big jump. But she had some interesting ideas. One thing she said that caught this commissioner's attention was she didn't know how low St. Mary's County schools had fallen in the state scale. Now, I've said before, I was a Board of Education member back in 96 to 2000. Back then, we were always number 1 or number 2 in the country. We were always battling Massachusetts to try to be the number 1 system. Well, when I got back, I went and looked at what she said, and I pulled up NEA's, National Education Association website. It showed we were 49th out of 50. I couldn't believe it. We couldn't have fallen that. We couldn't have fallen that far. Now, these polls are all over the board. I looked up U.S. News and World Report. We're about number 13. I looked up Consumer Affairs. We're number 12. I looked up Wallet Hub. Hey, we're number 3. So they're all over the board. But the key is we have challenges, and we need to raise the level of education. It's just going to be a constant battle going forward. One thing she said that I took away from her conversation was you have to change your paradigms, how you look at how you're spending your money. Because if you're not getting the bang for the buck, you have to change your paradigms and try to get more return on your investment, because the dollars going in are going to be tighter and tighter to come by. So let's hope for some new leadership at the state superintendent's office. Let's hope for some new leadership out of the governor's office, but something other than, doom, 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 which is what my takeaway was. I had a very hard time clapping for anything he had to say. I'll say the applause was very light during his whole speech, but look, it's his world. We just got to live in it. Now, this past week, went to the Ridge Rescue Squad installation, and I love going to these installations. I've always said there's a sense of, what's the term, camaraderie, dedication, and these volunteers who want to put their time in to helping their fellow citizens in times of need, rescue squad type of stuff. Now, I was amazingly impressed with Debbie Demko Drury. Debbie and I graduated high school, go Hornets, and that was a while back. But Debbie's been a ardent, diehard member of the Ridge Volunteer Rescue Squad for almost that whole time. She was their officer that had, what they do, they rate the number of calls. She was the top calls, but she was also the top number of hours donated. 2,720 hours this woman put in to the rescue squad. On a 365-day year, that's 7 hours and 45 minutes a day. Now, she obviously doesn't do that. She has a husband, and I know she has a family. Bottom line was, is I asked her how she did it. She said, well, some days she, stayed there all day, and some days maybe stayed overnight. But the point was, is dedication was just unbelievable. So those things are coming up. We've gotten the first before Christmas bunch done. Now we're going to do the after Christmas, and we look forward to it. In that same vein, I do want to mention that the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department, Ladies Auxiliary, will be having their breakfast with Santa. I know he was here this morning. He's got a lot of breakfasts to do. This Sunday, December 22nd, at the firehouse, starting at 8 a.m. It's all-you-can-eat breakfast, and I think kids under a certain age are free. I'm sorry, I don't know the details on that, but try to help there. Today we had the county audit, or the audit of the county financials. I'm following this stuff for years, and I take it very seriously how that audit turns out. I've always considered myself conservative and on my budgeting and how we spend our money, but different people want to say you guys are spending too much money. What I want to say is we got to pay attention to our experts. When our auditors are saying we have a conservative approach, maybe we do. When our bond rating are telling us you have a AAA and you've raised your bond rating and you're doing a good job, maybe we are. Now, it's not for me to blow my own horn. It's to tell you what other people are saying of us, are saying about us, and seeing in our financials. And I think we're doing a good job. Lastly, our last meeting before Christmas and New Year's, I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and enjoy the. Great.
Eric.
Very good. So I'm going to just touch on a couple different things this morning. First off, the Ridge Volunteer Rescue Squad, as Commissioner Hewitt talked about, we had a great time down there celebrating their 75th anniversary. And so that's just a huge milestone for them. They've been trailblazers in many different ways, being the first rescue squad in the county, having the first women leadership in a squad in the county. They really have done outstanding work. Their auxiliary presented a check for over $30,000, so great work to them. And it was just really good to be able to be there to celebrate with them and their new officers. So thank you to them, and thank you for all that they do. Also, over the weekend, I was able to attend the Hope and Harmony Chorus Concert. Now, this is a relatively new group that was formed last year that's made up of a lot of music teachers from the Southern Maryland area. And they are phenomenal. They do a great job. They had a wonderful concert. So be on the lookout for their next concert next year sometime whenever they do it, because you don't want to miss it. They do a really, really great job, and it's very well done. So it's fun to see. Finally, the MACO conference, we all talked about it last week, how I think the consensus on the board was we enjoy the winter conference a little bit more than the summer conference because it's a little more serious. It's a little more in the weeds and trying to get stuff done. And I had several takeaways. We had very interesting sessions I attended, and it's good to see our commissioner president back on the MACO board again and helping to set the goals for MACO, so that's wonderful to see. But first off, the governor's remarks. Commissioner Hewitt talked about it briefly, and I was sitting next to Commissioner Alderson during his remarks, and I leaned over to him at one point when he and I were not clapping, and probably most of our table was not clapping, but there was a lot of applause in the room because our governor can give a phenomenal speech. He's a very polished speaker that can really pull you in. And a lot of people were clapping, but we weren't, and I said, I don't think they're listening to what he actually said. He is going to be signing an executive order sometime soon, and one of the points of the executive order will be to streamline zoning and permitting. Now, who does the majority of zoning and permitting? Local governments. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but it makes me nervous. So that's definitely a concern. And then Commissioner Hewitt talked about the last day and some of the sessions there, and it's always a struggle to get people to stay for the last day sessions, but they have some of the most interesting information. And one of my favorite things that they seem to do every year is they do a preview of the General Assembly, and they bring in Republican and Democrat leadership from both houses and someone from the governor's office who's experienced in legislation, and they talk about what they expect to see in the upcoming session. And one of the things that I heard repeatedly from the Democrat leadership, and to be honest, we're in a Democrat-controlled state at the state level, and they're the ones who set the policy and push through whatever they'd like, but they kept using the phrase collaboration and partnership. So they are hoping to see collaboration and partnership with the locals, but it was said, if we don't have that, we're going to push through anyway. So is that really collaboration and partnership? I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. There is a massive structural deficit in the budget at the state level. As we heard in our audit this morning, St. Mary's County budget and St. Mary's County finances are well handled, well managed, but at the state level, it makes me nervous. What are they going to do, and what are they going to push down to us? We shall see in the next couple months. So thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year's. Enjoy your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to reiterate some points that Commissioner Hewitt, Commissioner Colvin made about MACO. There was a lot of really good sessions. Unfortunately, some of the sessions were, lots of lipstick on a pig. And you get there and like, man, I'm ready to learn about all this stuff. But a lot of the sessions, especially the energy ones, were basically, this is our point of view, and this is the point of view you will accept. Everything that the state would like to see as far as capital projects, they want to view it through a climate resiliency lens. Well, to me, whenever you start talking green and climate resiliency, the green is taxpayer money. I did ask in one of the energy sessions, had they looked at even considering small modular nuclear reactors for powering the grid? And at a very non-committal, basically non-answer, I don't think this administration is serious about green energy if you're not willing to look at nuclear options. I prefaced my question about the growing interest in data centers in this region. There was talk about Microsoft wanting to work with Constellation to fire up 3 Mile Island again, just to power their data center. Northern Virginia is having issues with how they're going to power the data centers that want to move in there. That's not saying I want to approve that I want a data center in St. Mary's County. It's just something that we need to look at statewide. We have places where we could put small modular reactors throughout southern Maryland that would really take the pressure off of fossil fuels. So if they want to have real, honest conversations about good energy, they need to start looking at nuclear and not just to the sun and hoping that the wind blows. About the Thursday night dinner and speech, I would say that the applause was tepid, is a good word for it. I mean, and of course, like Commissioner Colvin said, there was a lot of it was, are they hearing, are they listening, or are they just hearing? And I think there was a lot of hearing as opposed to listening. And some of the items that the governor said that he wanted to was not going to push back was basically the pre-K 3, which I think is probably one of the more expensive aspects of Blueprint, given the space and staff that we would need to facilitate a project like that. My wife's an early childhood educator. I support early childhood education, but you need to figure out the line of where you can actually start, where that's going to work out, and figure out how it gets paid for, which is that really doesn't come up a whole lot when we start talking about these pie in the skies. So coming home from Mako, I skipped Friday morning because I wanted to get home. I had some things I wanted to take care of because all of us had very busy weekends once we got home. So I was coming home Friday, hit the county line, and came to a complete dead stop a mile away from the county line. So I texted everybody else, through the county administrator, I texted them. So I texted everybody else on the board and said, hey, if you're coming down the road, come down 4, do not come through, come down 5. Well, with the projects we have going on in the northern end of the county, all the traffic work is being done on Friday afternoon. So, but I'm happy to report that it looks like all the road work is done up there except for activating the new traffic light, and that requires some cooperation with MDOT to get that done. But as far as paving and the striping, that looks like it's all done. So hopefully the traffic issues will be from the construction will be alleviated, and you just have to deal with your regular everyday traffic. Let me see. Saturday was Shop with a Cop. Had a fantastic time as usual. I got over there with the members of all the Optimist clubs in the county, and about 9:45, the first officer came in with their kids for Shop with a Cop, and they had 106 kids total this year. But as usual, it's fantastic turnout. Love seeing the smiles on the kids' face. Really, really love it when the kids come in and say, no, that's for mom. This is for dad. This is for little brother. That's for big sister. And they get themselves 1 or 2 items, but they spend the majority of their money on the rest of the family, which is just amazing. Of course, the Optimist Clubs put on a fantastic breakfast, and because nothing beats sausage, gravy, and biscuits. It's just God's food. Got home enough time from after that. Actually, do a little more decorating in my house because, of course, no one's done ready for Christmas yet. Then headed down the ridge, and 45-minute trip down there, 45-minute back, and it's. But my mom is in the auxiliary down there, and so a lot of the members of the rescue squad were around in my life when I was growing up down at that end of the county. So it was great getting down there and talking to those folks and listening to the history, which was really interesting, the 75-year history of that rescue squad. And a lot of people think Ridge, podunk and all that stuff, but the accomplishments that they have made over the years is just really a testament to their resiliency and dedication to our county. And Sunday, I was at Sutler Post Farm for a fundraiser for hospice. You know, hospice is very near and dear to my heart. In cooperation with Guy Distributing and Mark Guy and their team over there, the Budweiser Clydesdales were in the county. They were in the square on Friday, and they did a little presentation and drive around at the at Sutler Post Farm. These horses are just absolutely gorgeous, and they're just monstrous. And you can watch them when they're in the stall. It's really funny to watch them. They're in the stall and they're getting groomed and just chilling out and eating and everything. But as soon as they start doing the braids and the manes and bobbing the tails and getting the horses ready to show, you could see their attitudes change a little bit. And then once they actually get their harness gear on and they're getting hitched up, it is really just amazing to watch that. The personality of all those horses change on them, as soon as they start, because they know it's showtime and they got to show out. And it was a beautiful show, fantastic turnout. The weather wasn't super awesome, but it didn't deter a lot of people. And I really hope that hospice made out really good on this one, because it was a good collaborative effort between Guy Distributing, Sutler Post Farm, Wayne Mast, and hospice, and all the sponsors. And I look forward to seeing them again next year. Finally, be safe, shop local, take time to enjoy the time off, and I look forward to seeing everyone next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrov.
All right. Well, I'm going to continue the trend and touch on the Mako conference. It was a very good conference, a lot of great informative sessions. The winter conference is much more in the weeds and much more people wanting to roll up their sleeves and really have discussions around big issues, and it is much more beneficial, I think, to this commissioner in particular. I also attended a lot of the energy seminars that they had, and also the blueprint discussions that they had, and some interesting things, as Commissioner Alderson stated, about, especially on the energy side, they're not really serious about having broader, more in-depth conversations. Everything is focused on solar and wind. The few times that nuclear was brought up, it is very much glossed over. So I agree. I don't believe that they're really serious about doing it. The solar and the wind is very much coming after taxpayers to fund all that. So that is the direction that this administration is going to keep going forward with. I don't believe they're willing to have any real serious discussions on nuclear, or even look at it in any serious way. The governor's speech, personally, I came away from that speech kind of really feeling disappointed. The applause was very sparse throughout the room on different topics. The commissioners are correct. There was a lot of hearing, not listening. Our governor can give a great speech. He's a great speaker, very charismatic man. But what this commissioner took away from his speech was, hold on to your wallets, because there's going to be a lot more unfunded mandates being pushed down on the counties. We're going to really bear the brunt of this $2.1 billion structural deficit that they're talking about. It's going to be rough times, and this is very much tighten your belts and watch every penny. So we need to do that. I am very much a fiscal conservative. I'm very careful with how I spend money, and I think that shows as well. This entire commissioner board, as Commissioner Hewitt stated, we have a AAA bond rating. We've achieved a lot of great things this current term, this session of the board, that has not been able to be accomplished in the past. So we've done some great things, and that is our peers telling us that it's not this commissioner blowing his own horn either, but that is our peers and professionals within the industry looking at our finances, at how we budget, at how we run a budget, and telling us you're doing it right. So we are very fiscally sound in this county, and I'll leave it at that. And we're going forward into the new budget session, and we are looking very closely, and we roll up our sleeves, and sometimes we disagree on what should be done, but I think I can speak for every commissioner up here. As a matter of fact, I'm sure I am, that we are dedicated to this county and making sure that St. Mary's County is successful and sound. This also, I did not stay for Friday's sessions. I had to get back because I had a lot of things on my plate as well. Saturday morning, bright and early. I think Commissioner Alderson, you had the better end of that deal. I was out, even though it was a great morning, I was out in the cold at Wildwood Shopping Center, handing out donuts and hot chocolate to all the kids and all the volunteers who were there for Shop with the Cop. It was a great morning, but it was a little chilly out there. So I think I'm going to show up for the breakfast next year. But what a great organization that is, and I just want to personally extend a thank you to all of our law enforcement professionals who volunteer their time to be part of that, from our FOP to the sheriff's office to the Navy. I saw Coast Guard folks out there, our state troopers, just an amazing group of people to give of their time like that. So I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to be part of that every year. It is something I look forward to doing, and it really does just lift your spirits when you see those kids and how excited they are to get to do that. And the great thing is when they all get in those cars and lights and sirens all the way down to Walmart. It's great to watch, and I can see the excitement in their faces. It's really a wonderful time. After Shop with the Cop, I was able to stop by in the afternoon the laptop giveaway, which was very successful. We gave away all the laptops that we had, so that is completely done and put to bed. And I want to make sure I point something out. All those laptops that were given away were grant funded. Those are grant funded. There's no taxpayer dollars involved in that. There was some extremely incorrect reporting. I'll leave it at that this commissioner in particular was given laptops away like Santa Claus. That is not the case. You have to qualify for that. It's a very rigorous qualification that you have to go through. You have to qualify financially to receive those laptops. They were all grant funded. So I think it is a very good thing to help a lot of underprivileged people who could not otherwise afford a laptop. It helps school kids because more and more schoolwork is computer-based, and these underprivileged families who can't afford to get them, we're helping them with their education. We're helping them to be much more connected. So I think that is a great thing that we are able to accomplish there with that. And then Saturday evening was the 75th annual Ridge Volunteer Rescue Squad installation. Always a great time. I look forward to going to each and every one of those. We have some amazing people in this community that are so willing to give of their time, and those are the true heroes out there. That just amazing how much time that they give, and for nothing else but the privilege of helping others in their time of need. So big shout out to them and to all of our volunteers across the county. Thank you so much for what you do. Sunday, my wife and I were privileged to get to go to the museum in correlation with the UCAC Story Time with Santa. Another great time seeing the kids' faces light up when Santa comes in the room and getting to read stories to the kids, Christmas stories, and just cookies and milk. And it was a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. So thank you very much to the UCAC and the museum department for allowing my wife and I to be part of that as well. Looking forward to doing it again next year. Yesterday, was able to attend the grand opening for Tia's Cantina in the Wildwood Shopping Center. Absolutely wonderful people. Got to meet the owners. Very nice people. Very nice staff. They appeared to have a very successful opening day. I know several of my friends tried to get in for lunch, but when they got there for lunch, the place was packed and there was still 40 or 50 people waiting outside to get in. So they were not able to get in for lunch, but they're definitely going to come back. My wife and I and my family were going to go have a meal there in the very near future too. So I wish them all the success in the world at this restaurant. A lot of great food, great atmosphere, beautiful what they've done with the inside of the old bank there. You wouldn't even recognize it. So just wishing them all the success. And there's one more time to see Commissioner Santa in action this year on Thursday evening, 6 o'clock at the Meadows and Town Run here in Leonardtown. Santa and Mrs. Claus will be on the trolley riding around the neighborhood. Bring your kids out. Come on out, see Santa, and ride the trolley. That's going to be a fun evening. Starts at 6 o'clock, ends probably about 8. So come on out and do that. Another great time to see Santa and just see some great lights. They really decorate that housing. They do great. They do a great job in there of decorating everything out. So it's beautiful lights and everything like that. And lastly, I'm going to close with Merry Christmas, Happy and safe New Year. Please make sure, I say this every year, please make sure if you know anybody who's alone for the holidays, who might not have someplace to go, please extend them an invitation over to your home. So people should not be alone during the holidays. I've got several people coming to our house this year that don't have anywhere else to go, and families are distant. So looking forward to celebrating the holidays with them. And please, everybody, be safe, and we'll see you next year.
Great. Well, thank you, Commissioners. Everybody's hit everything that we did. Of course, it was very interesting in our winter conference in Mako. Everybody hit on everything. One thing that really got me, too, is on this energy thing. State of Maryland gets 40% of its energy from nuclear now, but 40% comes from outside the state. Mm-hmm. So something is totally wrong with that. We're actually working real hard to close down any kind of plant that uses coal, which, okay, that's the biggest polluter, but still at the same time, we're not replacing with anything. And they sort of expressed that you can't fully depend on solar and wind power to replace everything we've got that we're burning up right now. So only one person really mentioned about nuclear as an option, and that's all they said. So I think it's probably going to be our future, though, unfortunately, because it's not going to be met by all the we can't depend totally on the outside sources. So we got to be careful about that. Now, as we get into our budget, I know there's been some talks about the bond request that we've got out so far. We've gone through our CIP, we've cut back, reduced the bond. Still, it sounds like a high debt, but at the same time, I also was told by the people in school construction up in Annapolis that since 2005, construction of new schools and rehab have gone up 3 times since 2005. So 19 years has tripled in costs. So all of these things we're doing here, these building and everything, even though we might be, rehabbing some buildings, things like that, new roof replacements, HVAC, has tripled in cost. And you can look at our own housing market, how much it's gone up in the area, and how much it costs to build a new home. So all of this is, we in the county have the same problem that you have out there as you're looking at your budgets and everything. Inflation hit us just as hard. So everything is costing us more. And our reoccurring costs have gone up. And we've had to meet salary demands. And all this is necessary to continue good services to their constituents. Our people require good services. We're going to maintain that. We have to keep going. So to close up here, one of the great things that happened this past Saturday, my fellow Lions from the Lions Club in Leonardtown, we met at the fairgrounds. We have this Christmas giving program, and we all go out and distribute gifts to various families. We had a good group show up, so it's not too big. I had 7 different families that my wife and I went to deliver gifts. These, to me, are times when I'm thinking, boy, am I grateful for my successes in life. Because we went to one house, and I went in, the lady was crying. She had 2 little young people sitting on the couch. Inside their house was a couch, a chair, no other items in the living room, a TV on the side of the wall, and this little tree sitting up there, very sparsely decorated. And, of course, I had 2 big bags full of gifts for their kids. And after leaving there, it's just, I have tears in my own eyes. And I'm grateful for everything I've had in my life and what's been going on. And I look at my tree at home, it's loaded with gifts, 90% for our grandson, of course. But it's just, it's rewarding to give. And I'm so grateful. I'm going to tell the people who did all these gifts, we had about 40 or 50 families we went to that day. And I'm grateful for all those who participated and bought these gifts and delivered to us. We meet at the fairgrounds to get this distribution done. And I'm great. Thank you very much for all of you who did get a part of that. And next thing, of course, for me is we'll be heading to North Carolina soon. That's where my only son lives. And we're going to be spending Christmas down there. This will be our grandson's, Theo, the youngest one, his first Christmas. His last Christmas was spent in a NICU down in a hospital. And we didn't get him out until, we tried to get him out before Christmas. We couldn't do it. But this will be his very first Christmas. So I am grateful that they were able to take care of this young man, and he's doing very well. He's still on oxygen. He's still on a monitor. He's still got a feeding tube in his stomach, but he's doing excellent. He's just started walking now, so it's all going to be good. So for all of you out there, enjoy your family. Remember those who do need, and thank you to all of the volunteers throughout our area here that have done a great job of volunteering to make sure that some people have some type of a Christmas, especially for our children. They need some kind of a gift giving or some kind of attention this time of year. So thank you all very much for what you do. So may you have a good Christmas, whatever holiday you're celebrating, have a good one. And drive safely for those you're going out of town. Drive safely. And may you all have a good New Year coming up. I need a motion to go into closed session.
I move to enter into closed session to discuss real property, legal advice, and personnel.
Second.
Have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Nay nays? Ayes have it. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.